If you're Scott Rowland, are you feeling pretty good about your chances next year after getting 62% this year?
Yeah, he's gone up virtually at least 10% every year from when he started, almost. So he went from 10 to 17. It was 53 last year, and it was 30-something the year before that. And he's got 5 more cracks at this. If it's not next year, it'll be the year after. But I looked at the players who are eligible for next year's Hall election, and Carlos Beltran is the best one. He might be a strong candidate, but there are a lot of guys that are not as strong as he for a candidate, and you've lost Schilling, Bonds, Clemens, and Sosa off your ballot. So Rowland's chances are great. He should at least be in the 70 percentile next year, if not a little bit higher for 75.
Hey, Rick, I have a theory, as I'm often want to do, come up with cockamamie theories. But from when we were young and when you were covering the game starting in the 70s, the raw career total numbers, not every time, but most of the time, were the magic numbers. Those were usually the guidelines. And now, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it seems like we've evolved to the point where I'm voting for Hall of Fame talent. And the talents overcome the numbers. Good or bad, do you agree with that theory?
Just to some degree. I think the analytics have played a big part in how people look at these things, but I'm from old school philosophy here. I saw all these guys play, so I think I know what a Hall of Famer looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll check the numbers to backstop myself. Like I did a little studying on Jimmy Rollins, and I cast a vote for him. Jimmy Rollins had a wonderful career.
Yeah.
He's one of the most offensive-minded shortstops in the history of the game, with stolen bases and home runs and so forth. He played almost every day. He played very well defensively. He's not too far below Ozzie Smith as a Hall of Fame type shortstop.
Sometimes it's just like you just mentioned with with Rowland being on the ballot strategically at the right time next year. But I'm wondering, like a guy like Edmonds, was he just wrong place, wrong time? Because OPS higher than Scott Rowland, home runs more than Scott Rowland. Certainly you could make a case for him being the defensive equivalent of Scott Rowland. What do you think about Edmonds in the Hall?
Well, I think he'll get some serious consideration when he gets a chance to be involved in the era voting for the Veterans Committee type things, as it is. But unfortunately, he has to sweat out the 10 elections he would have been eligible for. He was knocked off the ballot after one election because he didn't get 5%. So he had 9 more dry ones to go through. I don't think he's gone to 10 elections yet. I think he's got 2 or 3 more, blind elections to go through. But yeah, I think so. I think Edmonds just preceded by about a year or so the analytics craze. If he could have started his vote, calculation type stuff when Rowland started his, Edmonds would be in the same spot because they're the same player. They just play different positions.
We could do, and we have over the years done show after show after show about the steroid era and all those things, the implication and what it means. I've admitted that I've kind of evolved from, run them out of the game to look in their own era. The comps are pretty even. Where are you in that as it relates to Hall of Fame voting?
I don't mind if these guys get in, and I think the best, but they're not getting in with my help. Okay, let's put it that way.
I like it.
And now we have another situation where, and it's the best situation as I see it. The guys who didn't make it yesterday, Bonds, Clemens, Schilling, Sosa, and guys like McGuire and some other people too, now go into the hands of the Historical Overview Committee, which I'm a member. And there's another ballot coming up for today's game, honoring or looking at recent players, umpires, executives, managers from maybe 25 years ago until about 5 years ago. So these guys get to go in the fall in that category for another election this December. And there'll be a 16-member committee that the Hall of Fame will entrust a vote on this, and at least half of them will be Hall of Famers. So if the Hall of Famers want them in, they can have them in. You know, I'm okay with that. I've heard some Hall of Famers say they wouldn't go to the ceremony if these guys were elected, some of these guys.
Wow.
And we'll see if they back that up or not. But you know, the 8 Hall of Famers or 9 Hall of Famers that will be on the 16-member panel are going to ask other Hall of Famers, hey, what do you think about these guys? Should I stump for them or not? So this is going to be their best chance. If they don't get in with if the Hall of Famers don't vote them in, then the Hall of Famers don't want them in.
So that you're one of the 16 on this because you need 12 votes in December to get in.
I'll help put together the ballot.
Okay.
I don't think I'll be on the 16. I don't know. I was on the 16 for one of the committees this last December, but that I don't know that I would be on 2 years in a row. So, we'll put together the ballot sometime this year, and you know, you can't not put Bonds, Clemens, Sosa, Schilling, McGuire on the ballot. You can't not do it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to put them on. Now let the Hall of Famers decide for themselves. As far as my votes in the BBWA election, I did not vote for Bonds or Clemens or Sosa, and I don't vote for guys. I try to keep this philosophy intact. If I vote for a guy the first year, I'll vote for him every year. If I don't for him the first year, I don't vote for him any year. He doesn't play anymore after the first year. He's either a Hall of Famer or he's not.
Explain this to us, and in as layman of terms as possible, how Bonds, Clemens, and Sosa are not getting in because of steroids, but David Ortiz, and we should say, as he has done throughout his career, discredited that survey testing that was done about 19 years ago and noted that he never tested positive once MLB strengthened its PED testing program in 2004. So how does he get, you know, the elephant in the room off his ballot?
Well, even the commissioner said that there was some question about the testing. That was an anonymous test, first of all. Those names weren't supposed to be out at all. And Ortiz is, of this era, one of the few people that actually was tested. Clemens and Bonds were never tested. McGuire was never tested. Sosa was never tested, officially by Major League Baseball. Ortiz was, because of the other stuff. So, so I think Ortiz is. I'm okay with the anonymous test, and his name comes out, and there was some confusion whether he actually tested positive or not. There were a few false positives in there apparently. So I'm all right with that. I did vote for him, and I don't think he's in the same boat with Clemens and Bonds. I know Clemens and Bonds were not suspended. They didn't end up in jail, but if it quacks like a duck.
My stance on it, Rick, is that they're all in it, the whole lot of them, in that era. And while certainly there were players, had to have been, that didn't juice, but you can't prove a negative. You can't prove someone didn't take steroids. It's unfortunate for the guys that didn't. So all I can do is look at, comparisons to their peers. And that's kind of where I've kind of ended up through this journey of the last, little over 20 years, probably 25 years from when that era began, in my view. And I just kind of, I guess it almost seems like a concession, but I don't know any other way to do it. I just don't feel like I'm comfortable enough to parse. He tested positive. He admitted. He said, well, I never tested positive, but never denied. I just think that it's too convoluted to try and be blind justice on those kinds of things. So I just said,
I understand that, remember, and I don't begrudge if these guys had gotten in last night, I'd have been okay with that.
Yeah.
But in the big picture, I couldn't see myself facing a player that I've covered that I'm sure was a clean player, rather sure I was a clean player in his day.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand in front of him and say I voted for those guys when they probably cheated and this other guy didn't, and the playing field wasn't. I couldn't face those guys and say, hey, he says you're going to vote for. Did you vote for those guys? I'm happy to say if asked, no, But I just couldn't face him and say that I did.
Well, your problem is you have a conscience.
Well, but there's the theory that, well, okay, Bonds and Clemens were Hall of Famers before they might have dabbled in steroids.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
yeah,
they probably were. I don't know why they did. I mean, I have a suspicion Bonds did it because he was teed off that McGuire and Sosa hit all these home runs and getting all this publicity, and he wasn't getting it.
The Hall of Famer Rick Hummel joins us on the press box. It appears another guy who could be joining Scott Rowland, or is certainly trending in that direction, is Todd Helton. And where do you stand on the Helton splits away from Coors Field as opposed to his production at Coors Field?
It doesn't bother me. Everybody has a home field. What about all those Yankee sluggers that played in Yankee Stadium when it was like 296 to right field and the wall was 3 feet high? A few home runs were hit
Yep.
there. So everybody's got a home field. That's fine. I mean, you still got to hit it. That doesn't bother me at all. It didn't bother me with Walker, who played a lot of his career at Coors Field and a lot in Montreal too. Helton played, all his career in Denver. And I mean, you look at it, but I've seen Todd Helton get base hits in Busch Stadium, home runs in Busch Stadium. I'm all right with that. And
he was almost a magnificent defender too. I think he won 3 Gold Gloves. He was pretty slick at first.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a chance to get in. He's in the 50s already, I think. And I think he might be a year, either the same year as Rowland or maybe a year behind him as far as how many elections he would have remaining. So, yeah, if he gets into the 60s next year, which he well might, I was actually impressed with Rodriguez getting 34% of the vote in his first election time this year. That was more than Bonds and Clemens got, or right about the same their first year. So even A-Rod has got a chance. And, for whatever it's worth, he did take his suspension. He took his lumps. He said, okay, yeah, you got me. Yeah. Eventually he said that.
All right. How do you see what's going on in Major League Baseball? It seems like there's a little bit of progress, maybe incremental steps in the negotiations.
I like it. Anytime they're talking, it's a good thing. When they weren't talking for 42 days or whatever it was, that was a bad thing. I don't care how many holidays were involved. And there's still plenty of time to get the season started on time. I don't have much doubt about that. Will spring training be affected a little bit? Maybe. Maybe you won't have 6 weeks. Maybe you'll have 4. Maybe you have 3. I don't know, which is bad. The fewer days you have in spring training, the more sore arms you're going to have and hamstring pulls and whatever else, because those guys won't be in shape to go for it at the start of the season. But I think February 1st was kind of my arbitrary deadline for having this thing settled to get spring training started on the 15th or 16th. I don't think February 1st is going to be settled, but they're going to have a couple more meetings before then. And maybe by March 1st, it'll be settled and you can get started and you have start spring training March 8th or so, maybe 10th, and then you still get 3 weeks down there. So, or if it's settled February 15th is more ideal than that even, and you can start spring training March 1st and get a whole month out of it.
Yeah, and if you're going to lose anything, probably losing games is they probably play more games than they need to play. But I agree, getting in shape and being game ready fitness-wise is the important part.
They would surely have to have expanded rosters.
Yeah.
As they did, in the COVID year, 2020 when they had the short season, they had bigger rosters at the start, and even toward the end they had bigger rosters. But you could have 28 guys instead of 26. You could even have 30 for 2 or 3 weeks, and make sure you have your pitchers don't get goofy and try to throw the ball through a wall or anything. And you would have 16 pitchers instead of 13, and you gradually get down to 26 by, let's say, May 1st, May 15th. So they're going to have to do that if they don't have a full spring training.
I doubt if Bob Ramsey's pick, Kyle Schwarber, is going to end up in a Cardinal uniform this year. So how would you divvy up the DH at-bats on a percentage point of view with the roster as we stand?
Well, I wouldn't say Schwarber is not going to be here, but the vibe I get is that they want a DH, any DH candidate they have to be able to play first base and third base. on the rare days that Arenado and Goldschmidt are off, which is almost never. You know, what if one of those guys gets hurt? You got to have. And we know Schwarber doesn't play third base, and we darn sure know he can't play first base after that debacle. That series he had in the championship series against Houston, where he's okay in left field. Well, you don't need anybody in left field. You got two-time Gold Glover out there, and he can't play right field. So, but could he be the type of hitter they're looking for? Yeah, on base guy, left-handed hitter with power, walks a lot. That part is great. If they wanted to go with strictly, him as a DH, I don't know if he wants to be a DH. I think he wants to play. And but if they change their philosophy and say we're looking for strictly a DH, well, I think he's still in play then. But I think they want to have a guy they can put in the field and take these other guys off their feet, like Goldschmidt and Arenado, and DH them once in a while.
Have you looked around? Do you have a name you like, or do you think the internal options, meaning Gorman or somebody else? Is there anybody else you like?
Well, I like, and he's not a household name, I like Colin Moran, who the Pirates had.
Yeah.
And look at his numbers in this ballpark. They're fabulous. And that's for over 100 at-bats. He's hitting like 330 for his career here, which is pretty good. And he's had big home runs here and here and in Pittsburgh against the Cardinals, but the big hits here. Plays first, plays third. Is he great at those positions? No. Is he better than Schwarber at first? You bet. And he could be a DH, at least a part-time DH. I don't know that I want to put Yepez and Gorman as DHs right away.
Mm-hmm.
They're kids. They need to play a little bit more, I think. I don't know if you don't keep both those kids at the start of the year unless you have expanded rosters. And if you have a 26-man roster, one or both will have to go to Memphis to get some more time. And neither one played a whole season in AAA last year.
Right.
They both started the season in AA.
So
this isn't to say they're ready yet.
To answer the question, which you successfully ducked here for 2 minutes, it's Yepez and Nootbaar as the DHs. Is that the way you're seeing it then?
No, I don't think there's anybody I don't think that DH is here yet.
Okay.
I don't. If I got Nootbaar, I'm playing him, and I'm giving O'Neill or Carlson a day off from the field.
Yeah.
Nootbaar's a good player. I don't
agree.
want to have him not getting any time in the field.
By the way, we have Matt Holliday Sunday on Sports Plus, and I think Tyler O'Neill's could end up being the next really, really good left fielder. Do you think, Commish, like 10 years from now, we're going to be saying this is like a 3 or 4 time All-Star and he's going to have this incredible career?
Maybe. He will have to show that he can stay healthy for a whole season. He did better last year, but he still spent some time on the DL early in the year. That's the biggest thing for him is to stay healthy. He's got a jam-packed body full of muscle, and sometimes he gets hurt. And it's not because he's not in shape. He is in shape, but maybe he took it to shape sometimes. But yeah, that kind of guy could be a 2 or 3 time All-Star. I'm surprised a little bit he wasn't an All-Star this past season, but that's just the way it goes. I think that would be a generous assessment, maybe 3 or 4 times, but he should make a couple All-Star teams anyway. And there's not many more complete players in the league, especially at that position, than he is. Left fielders usually don't have great throwing arms as he does, or have great speed as he does, or be able to hit for power and for average for the first time in his career as he does. So he's one of the top couple, 3 left fielders in this league.
Rick, I was going to ask you, and we may still get to it, about your thoughts on how you predict shortstop situation will play out with the Cardinals. But when I was thinking about it, I thought, you know what? I'd rather ask you about a guy. And were you on the beat yet with the Ray Bussey spring training?
I caught some of that, not in spring training. I wasn't in spring training, but I did cover some games early in the season when he was trying.
And he was in spring training. It looked like this is the next guy. I mean, everybody really thought so, right?
Yeah. And Red played him for about, I don't know, what do you think, month, 6 weeks, something like that?
Yeah.
And,
boy.
He wasn't the guy. He wasn't any guy.
So, leading us into who's the Cardinals guy? Do we know yet? And if you were going to predict, and maybe that's not something you enjoy doing, but what do you think's going to happen at short?
I think so far they've tied themselves to DeYoung for one more time, and I'm in favor of that. Actually, I'm not a big Sosa fan. I think Sosa is capable of playing regular shortstop for a while. I don't see that as an entire season for him. And I was, I know it was a one-game test, but that in playoff game, he looked awfully jumpy in that playoff game.
He did. He really did.
So DeYoung is, that 187 or whatever he hit last year is ridiculous. I think he just dug himself a hole so big he couldn't get out of it. And he was doing not too badly until he got hurt in Milwaukee. And he was out maybe a month and never really got over that. I wouldn't give him another whole season, though. I would say, okay, to myself, I wouldn't tell him this, but I'd kind of think you give him 4 to 6 weeks at the start of the year. Then you have to go to Sosa because he did help you out a lot this past season. And if neither one of those guys does it, then you either have to go get somebody from outside, which isn't going to be easy to do during the season because the shortstop market, all these guys will be signed by then. Or if you think Gorman can play second base at that point, and he'll be doing that at Memphis at the start of the year, I'm pretty sure, you could put Edman at short. Edman was a shortstop in the minor leagues anyway.
Yeah.
He's played well everywhere else. That wouldn't be the way I'd go forever, but you can get through a season that way.
And waiting till the middle of June before they decide what they have is typical under Mozeliak's regime anyway. He's very, very patient early in the year. Yeah,
I think as far as DeYoung versus Sosa, though, I think Sosa would get the call after about mid-May after DeYoung was.
Yeah.
He was still hitting 200, but Mo might not make another move outside the organization until later on, even closer to July, maybe seeing what happens. I'm not a big Trevor Story fan. Is he a quality player? Yeah. Is he a lot better than DeYoung? I'd say no. They both made the All-Star team in 2019. Neither one of them made it last year. DeYoung, for obvious reasons, the Story just wasn't quite good enough. But I don't know that DeYoung is inferior to Story defensively. I don't think Story is a great hitter. I think Story's about a 260 hitter.
Mm-hmm. All right, Commish, before I let you go, how about your career? I think I can draw a comparison between you and Sean Payton, both Hall of Famers, both have trophy wives, lots of millions in the bank. Are you going to be going the Sean Payton route, or are you going to be at this for a lot longer?
Well, I'm on board for another full season in this season, and then I'm looking to go more on a part-time basis after that. But I'll be a full-time, full-tilt boogie for this season still, and then ease back into more limited role.
Very nice. Commish, honored to have you on, sir. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.